the evening. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. Happy Saturday to you all. I too am glad to be here. I'm happy to be in company of like-minded individuals, and that's why we came together to form this group. We feel strongly that we need more advocates. We need more noise to be made against what the PPP is doing in Guyana. I'm happy to be aligned with this group, my brothers and sisters, and we are happy that you have come to hear. Some of us don't know what's happening, so tonight might be a learning experience, and we want to encourage you to let's talk. We might have differences of opinions, but ultimately I think we are of one accord. If you look around here, you'll see that there's some nationalities are missing, and you can understand why. It's a reflection of what happens in Guyana, and we're not for that. All are invited, lest all of us be consumed. This is the first of many to come, and welcome all of you. Thank you.
Dennis Fraser, and all I have to say is end the racism in Guyana.
Vanessa Stewart, and I'm just a supporter. I'm actually American-born parents of families. So just a supporter. Glad you all are here.
Dawn Simmons, I was on kitchen duty, so that's good. I think it's MLK who said, injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. So today is a chance to talk about what's happening back home and to see if we could come up with some constructive solutions. Welcome.
Thank you guys so much. And we are in this together. We will not stop until there's transformational change happening in Guyana. We won't stop, ain't gonna stop. And so we are here to keep the fire burning, and we will continue to ignite the fire of awareness in what's happening in our communities back home in Guyana. Thank you very much. All right, to my right, I am very privileged. I think they went somewhere, but I'm extremely privileged tonight to be in company of some really great Guyanese stalwarts that have taken the time out to be able to be here with us. And all of them have actually traveled from their respective places, one all the way from Guyana, and certainly to come and to be with us. And that really illustrates for me the importance of what we are doing here tonight and what we have actually birthed in this movement. And so you will have an opportunity to hear from these very esteemed gentlemen tonight. And I'm so lucky and grateful to be the only woman to sit with them. So I'm absolutely grateful and privileged to be able to do that. Tonight we actually have with us Mr. Enrico Wolford. And for most of you who have had deep roots in Guyana, that name should be a name that resonates, and there is some level of familiarity that you would have heard or known or seen Mr. Wolford in the streets, in the trenches, in the roots of journalism in our country. And so I will actually take this time and introduce Mr. Wolford, because he will be moderating this evening's session with Dr. Ines and the esteemed Dr. Ines and the esteemed Rickford Burke. All right. I'm going to be extremely diligent and follow my script, because I don't think I want to be able to mess up Mr. Wolford's his pedigree and you know, certainly his background. And so before I do that, I think the privilege of being able to MC any program, there will always be those very important nuggets that we need to be able to make sure happen. And so tonight I would like to actually have the pastor for this church to please stand. And if he can come up and say something. And we would like to thank him for his generosity in availing this space to us so that we can actually meet here and to convene. So, Pastor.
Thank you so very much. You have important business to attend to, so I will be brief. Let me bring greetings from the Columbia Drive United Methodist Church. We are delighted to host all of you who are members of the diaspora of Guyana. So my prayers to you for your very important work. Remember, it starts with a spark. And I was sitting there listening to the plight of the people of Guyana. And it occurred to me that people that look like us have a lot in common. So my prayers are with you. God bless you in your endeavors. Thank you.
Thank you, John Pastor. All right, we are going to keep this program going. Enrico Wilford. Mr. Wilford is an investigative journalist with over 40 years of experience in broadcasting. He began his career in the radio as head of current affairs at the Guyana Broadcasting Corporation before being seconded to the Guyana Film Center as a producer director. He worked to develop GTV, Guyana Television, which is now known as the National Communication Network. And certainly some of us knows that as NCN. He founded Capital News, a nightly television newscast on WRHM, Channel 7 in Guyana, and became its editor-in-chief. Mr. Wilford has extensive knowledge of Guyanese and Caribbean narcotics operations. In addition to the drug trade he covered in the area international affairs, politics, and cultural and heritage issues. He was president of the Guyana Press Association, and he is an advocate of intellectual property rights, fair and transparent frequency spectrum management, freedom of the press, and expression matters. He was chairman and CEO of the National Communications Network in Guyana. He served as advisor to the Minister of Public Telecommunications in Guyana, representing the country at International Telecommunications Union, ITU, and the Caribbean Telecommunications Union, CTU. He was a member of the of the board for the Caribbean Broadcasting Union, CBU. He twice served as an election observer for the Commonwealth in Vatua and the Bahamas. Mr. Wilford also on pre-electoral mission in Mexico in 1997. Mr. Wilford holds an MA in International Relations and a BSc in Broadcast Journalism from Syracuse University in New York. He was conferred in 2017 with the Golden Arrow Aid of Achievement National Award from Guyana. And so at this time, I would like to acknowledge and for us to recognize one of our own brothers from our dearest country, Guyana, Mr. Enrico Wilford. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that introduction. And I'd like to thank the organizers for allowing me to be here as a journalist. Thank the organizers for allowing me to be here as a journalist. And I made it very clear to the persons who are presenters that that is the capacity I'm here. I've also made it very clear to the organizers that it is in that capacity that I'm here as a journalist. And therefore, any statement that I don't necessarily agree with in terms of factual information, I'm going to say just that. And while you're not supposed to be ungracious to your host, I'm conscious that the organization has a mission statement, has said some things, but I don't necessarily agree with everything that they have said, including the fact that we had an election in 2020. And an election is based on how many votes you have in a ballot box. And whoever gets those votes in the ballot box will then be declared the winner according to the Guyana Constitution. So that's one of the first areas that I want to make very clear as a former Commonwealth observer, that that's what we do. We observe elections and we note who wins. And as a result of people winning, people lose. And we have got to acknowledge that that is what happens. So that is one thing that I wanted to make very clear when I heard certain words being attached. You can use those words if you want. That is your freedom of expression under the Guyana Constitution and I think under the US Constitution. But persons can differ in terms of how they see those words as being used. The same is true of how we describe race and ethnicity in Guyana. The good thing about this event is that we sang all 4 verses of the national anthem. And the national anthem has in it one land of united and free. So we've got to get to that position or we take those words out of the national anthem. So those are some of my introductory remarks. My job is to also introduce the presenters. I know they will come with certain contentious, if not polemic, positions. And I'm sure that's what you're here for. And those joining us on the various web platforms will also take positions. And we will attempt to ventilate as much as possible. But again, if something is said, as a journalist, and I can moderate that position, I will so do. So it's my task now to introduce the first presenter, and I think most of you know him. He is the president of the Caribbean Guyana Institute for Democracy, also called CIGID. And he's Mr. Rickford Burke, and he is an advocate for various human rights issues in Guyana, an advocate for political rights, an advocate with regard to how some of the 6 people are treated in Guyana and what should be corrected. So I'm going to ask Rickford to make his presentation right now.
Thank you very much, Mr. Moderator. The Honorable Enrico Wilford, somebody I've known for, well, I can say almost all of my life. Developed, my sister, we actually grew up together on the East Coast. Dr. Hines, it's a pleasure to be sharing this platform with you. Guyanese community leaders, Hazel Marshall, and all the others here. Thank you guys for having me. We have some CGID members who came in from New York. One of them is lost in transit. We know he came in. We know he arrived at the airport. We picked him up, but we can't find him. Somebody said they saw him driving in a car with a girl somewhere. I'm not sure. But we have one of our board members, Dr. Morris. Wave. Dr. Colvin Morris. Actually, he's a new dad, just got a baby today. Yes, last night. And he's the only Black poultry nutritionist in America. And he's Guyanese, young professional. So give him another round of applause. We have other people here, but I don't want to expose them to any sort of political attacks, so I wouldn't mention that. But we have a few people here who came in from New York. I'm happy to be in Atlanta. I'm here for the International Poverty Forum, which concluded yesterday. It was a wonderful event. And I was also happy to participate in that. I listened very carefully to the moderator's introductory comments. And so I can assume that if he doesn't challenge anything, everything that was said is factual. That's what he said. So I don't anticipate that he's going to challenge anything that I have to say or Dr. Hines has to say, because we all speak truth to power. Thank you guys for being here. You're awfully quiet. Good night, everybody. Good night, everybody. Let's get this ball rolling. I'm happy to be here. As I said, our country is at a crossroad. We in CGID have been fighting for all of the people of Guyana. We believe that Guyana belongs to all of its people, all 6 races. Somebody said the Brazilians are now the 7th race. So we believe in equal rights and justice for everybody in Guyana. But particularly, we have a situation where Afro-Guyanese rights are being infringed on. We have a government that, as far as I'm concerned, does not respect the rights of Black people and gets confused when we advocate for the rights of Black people. And when we say Black, we mean the minorities. And even the East Indians, when we speak about subjugation, rather, we include the people who do not support the People's Progressive Party government. So that includes some East Indians, some Amerindians, some mixed race, but primarily Black people. And they want to hold us to their standards of what racism is. They want to hold us to their rules in Guyana, but we live in North America, where we are not ashamed to fight for the rights of Black people. And so we at CGID always try to make that clear. We are oriented differently. In this country, we face the same thing, especially those of you who live in the South. And so that's why we have laws and institutions and organizations and groups and advocates to protect our rights. And I think that the situation in Guyana now warrants the kind of actions that we saw undertaken during the civil rights struggle of America during the 50s and 60s. So the situation in Guyana has recently ballooned out of control into unimaginable proportions. And I don't say this lightly. The government is currently combing through the country, looking for people who are protesting and who are advocating for civil rights and racial justice, etc. And they're arresting them and charging them with terrorism. The only terrorism Guyana ever experienced came from the People's Progressive Party. Let me repeat that. The only terrorism in history that we know of that really fits the actual definition of terrorism, which has a political objective, came from the People's Progressive Party. It happened from 1961 to 1964, and it happened from 1999 to 2011, when we had death squads parading through our country, killing people. So the charges that you see and the wanted bulletins you see, they're fabrications. They're fabrications. They're intimidation tactics. And all of us have a duty to condemn it. They're looking for the most heinous, dangerous crimes that would banish you and then isolate you internationally and charge young people, Black people, with them. I want to pause on this point a bit, because we are seeing unmatched abuse of police powers currently in Guyana. And too many people are silent. We had a situation where at Golden Grove, Quindon Bacchus was killed, murdered by a police officer over a girl. There was a dispute over a girl that started at a bar at Melanie. I have the report, so I know what I'm talking about. And that police officer with whom Quindon Bacchus had the dispute, Quindon Bacchus from Golden Grove, arranged some scheme and took his colleagues to Haslington, baited him, and shot and killed him. And the police force issued 3 different mendacious statements about how he died. Eventually, people living in the neighborhood released their surveillance cameras and everybody saw how he died. And if it wasn't for protests by the people of Golden Grove, they would have gotten away with that murder. But because the people kept the protests, the surveillance videos were released, the president was forced to ask the chairman of the Police Complaints Authority, Justice Ramlal, to investigate that murder. And as a result of that, the perpetrators were charged with murder and other charges. That's terrorism. That's state-sponsored terrorism. And the same thing happened on the Essequibo coast or in Boston. They broke into his house and killed him for no reason in his sleep, issued a statement lying, saying that he was shot during a confrontation with the police. The man was killed in his bed sleeping. The same thing with Kevin Andrews at Grove. The police chased him, shot and killed him, said that he died in a shootout. The investigation found he had no gun. The Henry boys, the police cover up that murder. They know who killed him. Quindon Bacchus, Harris Singh. And there's another dangerous thing developing in Guyana. Whenever you come up against the police, they come back later on and they charge you, harass you, charge you with murder. They did that to Isaiah Henry's brother. As if the family did not go through enough. They charged his brother with murdering an East Indian young man by the name of Harris Singh. The police force is out of control, and everybody knows my situation. I live in America, and they feel that I have too much influence. So every time I speak, they put out a wanted bulletin. And now the Attorney General is on a rampage, and we believe that their strategy is to, through me, try to attack the elected officials in this country at the highest level. And so we are aware of the strategy. We are aware of the strategy. And that's all I'll say. We are aware of the strategy at the highest levels of this government. They have oil money, so they think that they're powerful, and they want to take on members of Congress, an attorney general, attorneys general. They're extending their malice beyond Guyana's borders into the diaspora, as I just said. They're attacking you. They're looking at people who come to these meetings, and when you go to Guyana, they're questioning you at the airport, putting you on lists. We have a Russian society. Undoubtedly, the rights of citizens and the rule of law are under siege. These threats are vile in nature and pose a danger to every Guyanese. Regardless, and I want the PPP supporters to know this, regardless of your political persuasion, once you cross the government, they will use these same tactics against you. And that's why it's important for everybody to condemn them. Guyana's oil and gas wealth has placed the country among the world's fastest growing economies. This has attracted ExxonMobil, CGX, Hess, etc., some of the richest corporations in the world. The PPP regime is in possession as a result of the oil revenues of hundreds of billions of dollars that belong to the Guyanese people. And they have access to billions more. Most of it they've chosen to spend on their own supporters. Some they're spending on lobbyists in America to influence policymakers here. Some they're spending on coming after us who speak out against them. They're spending everywhere, but they are clear that it should not be spent on a certain demographic that this audience represents. Sadly, the vile attacks of discrimination perpetrated by the government have shut out, as I just said, hundreds of thousands of Guyanese from benefiting from the oil wealth of Guyana. That's a fact. I know that the moderator will not challenge that. That's a fact. They're using the oil wealth to enrich themselves, their families, and the East Indian population that support them. Not all East Indians, the East Indian population that supports them. So it seems as though the government, the party in government believes that the country is theirs. I use the analogy that they think it's a plantation and they're the new slave owners. They're the new plantocracy. Most fundamental rights and freedom, including freedom of expression and association, are blatantly assailed every day. There's economic genocide. Those who are willing to toe the line in adherence to the regime's autocratic governance are ostracized, marginalized, victimized. Private businesses private business owners are persecuted for advertising with media houses that don't support the government, for example. Not-for-profit organizations, their funding is withdrawn. The government uses the police force to enforce ethnic supremacy in the country, to kill dissent, to stifle free speech, and to oppress the people. And why do you think they're using the police force? because the police force is majority black. And they know that when we make the charges about racism, they're like, no, the police commissioner is black. Most of these people are black. But that's the apartheid system of government. A few people control a majority of an organization to oppress the people. That's apartheid. Recently, we had a meeting in New York to discuss the attacks on us in the diaspora on October 30th. Our meeting was with our local elected officials because these people are vicious. They are reaching into the United States to trample on people's rights. And so we had the Attorney General of New York, Congressman Hakeem Jeffries, who's now the Democratic leader in Congress. We had the FBI. We had the Justice Department, representing the US Attorney General. We had the District Attorney's Office, and we had the NYPD there, and many other elected officials. At that meeting, we outlined crimes, transnational repression crimes. Okay, the cameraman has a difficulty in the back there, so he's going to fix it. But in the meantime, we had a number of our elected officials there as well, City Council, Assembly. And one of the main reasons why we had that meeting is because, one, the Attorney General of Guyana came to this country. We had a protest against him. And after that protest, he was allegedly involved in a discussion to have me killed in New York. And let me say this, I heard Barry Jagde saying we made it up. We have recordings. There was a law enforcement officer present witnessing the discussion. And as a law enforcement officer, he felt compelled to uphold the law. And he left that meeting and called me and called the police. And then we all called the FBI. And so that investigation is ongoing. So when you hear people say that we made it up, it's not true. Unlike what they're trying to do in Guyana, make up things and say I must go there for trial, he was actually in the jurisdiction of New York, saying that I must be eliminated, I must be stopped, basically saying I must be killed. So at that meeting, the Attorney General, Letitia James, everybody knows her, she's America's Attorney General, she warned the government. And she said, if anything happens to me or any one of the Guyanese in New York speaking out, members of the government will be held personally accountable. I think they took it for a joke, but I don't think they know who Letitia James is. And so in response to Letitia James, the government committed further crimes of transnational repression. Transnational repression crimes are crimes against the Transnational Accountability and Prevention Act, which bars foreign government from attacking their citizens in this country for political reasons. So, and it specifies the crime over which the FBI has jurisdiction to investigate it. And so, Gail Teixeira, Bar Jagdeo, and Anil Nandlal responded to her. Gail Teixeira issued a letter, called me a criminal. She said I have some sexual assault conviction. I don't know where these people get these things from. Said Paul Slow was a criminal, a distinguished former assistant police commissioner. That itself is criminal, slandering people for political purposes. And that response by Gail Teixeira triggered an FBI investigation. We've all met with the FBI, including myself, including Paul Slow. And I'm scheduled to meet with the FBI again in the coming week because of what the Attorney General has been saying. That matter is now under investigation. But the government, in this same line, they have been abusing the courts as well, the criminal justice system, the police, all of these institutions they're using for political vendetta. And they have now been trying to procure the federal government of the United States. They want to procure now the federal government to help them carry out their vendetta by writing the federal government and telling them work this, work that, work that. We must not tolerate it. And very soon, there's a major announcement that the United States government will make about Guyana. Now, these repressive tactics are meant to intimidate the Guyanese population. Now, imagine we're here and they don't think we should speak. We're in another country. We're in the bastion of democracy. And the government of Guyana thinks that we must not speak. They think that they are so powerful that they can reach into the United States, violate US law, attempt to get the United States government to commit crimes against Americans. One of the other reasons the FBI started an investigation is they have this thug, wannabe thug, on social media called Victor Singh, who harasses you, hacks into your social media, comes to your home. He leaves wherever it is and drives the people home and threatens them with guns. And he made the mistake and threatened a principal in New York, a public school principal, and told her he is going to blow up her place of work, which is a public school. So these tactics are unacceptable. And when combined with discrimination, it is clear that the government of Guyana is following the playbook of the KKK and the Jim Crow racists in America from the 1960s. This is the tactic. I kid you not. Don't take what I'm saying lightly. They are following that playbook of terrorizing people who are opposed to them. Guyanese, African Guyanese, are the descendants of indomitable slaves. We have braved many atrocities, or our ancestors braved many atrocities and defeated slavery and colonialism. And after they became free people, they went on to purchase villages and establish commerce and industry, as well as a banking system. Our foreparents were the modern equivalent of engineers, mathematicians, medical scientists, bankers, etc. They set the catalyst for Guyana's development. They laid the foundation. Hence, contrary to the belief of the PPP, African Guyanese are not slaves, we're not second-class citizens. We are not criminals. We built Guyana, and we built the very foundation they stand on today. So the discrimination we face, the indignity, the inhumanity, the atrocities, the humiliation, the lack of opportunity, unemployment, underdevelopment, disempowerment, neglect, displacement, discrimination, they are all crimes against humanity. And we must not accept it anymore. The discussion that we at CGID want to have is not whether there's discrimination in Guyana. Again, the moderator would not have reason to challenge that. It is how do we address it? How do we address the discrimination? We've been crying and talking for the last 3 years before that, prior to the coalition government. For 23 years, nothing changed. The People's Progressive Party is not prepared to concede an inch to black people in Guyana. Not an inch. Quote me on that. Not one thing. I want anybody to tell me in the last 23 years what concessions they made to people who've cried out for marginalization. In the last 3 years, what concessions have made? They have even refused to meet with the black leaders of Guyana. They have refused to meet with the elected representatives, although mandated by the Constitution. They own the country. Their grandfather dead and left the whole transport to Guyana for them. As African Guyanese, we reject this. We reject this. And we are determined to change it. And we want the international community to join us to help change it. Now, the government says, everything Rick Robert says a lie. Everything David Hines says a lie. Yeah, the PNC, everybody, lie. The whole world, the whole black population is lying on them. Let me give you a few examples of their racism. In August 2022, a black organization decided to have a conversation on Guyana emerging as an apartheid state. The Attorney General of the world, issued a statement saying that discussion is unconstitutional. An abuse of authority, a violation of the freedom of speech provision of the Constitution. Imagine the Attorney General of a country who's supposed to protect the Constitution and ensure that it is adhered to. Issued a statement saying, hey, black people, no, you all cannot have a discussion on whether or not we're racist. That is against the law. Then, in a show of brutal power, the government started confiscating people's lands. Look at what they did to Maka. I have said it's the closest thing we've come to how slave masters treated black people on the plantations. And it must never happen again. Brutalizing black women and children, breaking up their homes, destroying their furnishing and appliances, killing their animals and burying it. Never again. No, that is slavery. And the country sat back and watched them do it. And because nothing happened, they went and broke down the PNC office and let them. I think the next thing they'll do is go and break down Congress Place, if we let them. Never again must that happen. Then, the government audaciously used the Guyana police force to witch hunt former government ministers, all black, former GCOM senior staff, all black, former CEOs. Every single person they have witch hunted and gone after are Afro-Guyanese. Then, all the Afro-Guyanese opposition talk show hosts in Guyana have been arrested, every one of them. The moderator can't challenge that either. Even the member of parliament with constitutional immunities, they arrested. Cheryl Duncan. Then they went on to arrest the mayor. And I have said, if I were the mayor of Georgetown, they could come back to town. I am serious. You arrested the mayor because he wants to protect the people? And because he's asking, is this a religious thing? Freedom of speech, dead. Democracy, barely hanging through the window, holding on by his pants in the country. 10 years. And they don't want people to talk. And then, there comes the worst atrocity so far. Attorney at law, Tamika Clark, who advised her client not to say anything to the police under the Constitution, she was arrested for doing that. And to this day, the government has not apologized. The government has refused to pay restitution to her. She has to take them to court. And the Attorney General confirming that the police force doesn't obey the law, but follow political directive, said, I called the head of SUPU, which is the unit that arrested her, and told him to loose her. He didn't call the Minister of Home Affairs, who has jurisdiction of the police. He didn't call the police commissioner. He called directly to the Assistant Commissioner, Karim Bash, who was in charge of SUPU, and said, loose the lawyer, and he did. So we now see who's really the Commissioner of Police. Then we had a situation where the government directed the police to arrest Chris Jones, the chief whip. Although a judge issued an injunction barring them from entering Chris Jones's property, they dropped it on the ground when they were served like Janet Jagan did, went into his broke into his property, arrested him, and he is the chief whip of the opposition in Parliament. The people are showing us that they own and control the law. They don't care about the law, they don't respect the law, but they want you to respect it. Remember Animal Farm, the pigs? They're going to say I'm calling them pigs. The government also terminated over 3,000 Afro-Guyanese citizens, public government officials, when they came to power. Over 3,000. Those people have families. They're police officers' mothers and sisters and brothers, GDF officers' family members. But the country is silent. Why? And we have to change it. This is something that we're determined to change. And like I said, they took away the funding for International Decade of People of African Descent. They took away the funding for ACDA. ACDA is the Black African Cultural Development Organization that puts on Emancipation Day at the National Park. They took away the funding from ACDA. But they're increasing the funding, hundreds of millions they're giving to East Indian organizations, including the East Indian Arrival Committee. What is the explanation for that if that is not racism? And I'm coming to a close. Of recent, you notice they started banning Africans from coming to Guyana, Haitians from coming to Guyana. They blocked a whole host of African medical students. No explanation given. They banned the Haitians. And then they breached the revised Treaty of CARICOM and imposed a visa restriction on Haitians and claim that they're doing it because of human trafficking. But in the meantime, they're bringing in Bangladeshis and Brazilians and Cubans and Venezuelans and Pakistanis all straight here. And just 2 weeks ago, they went to India to negotiate something where they're bringing Indians to fill the workforce from India. In the meantime, we have all kind of arrangements in CARICOM for free movement of professionals, like the Haitians. But those are black people. They don't want black people to come to Guyana. That's a fact. The moderator can't challenge that either. That's a fact. And I believe that the root of this is electoral politics. Because they want to give them citizenship so they can vote. Barjagam accused the AP and UAFC government of doing that when the Haitians were coming. And now there's another dangerous thing, and I see Guyanese are very silent. They're introducing this one ID thing, where the PPP will have access to all of their information. You want Barjagam to pick up a phone and call and say, send me that ID number for work. And they're going to see which supermarket you went to, who doctor you went to, when you get arrested, what's your date of birth. Guyanese, you trust the PPP government with that information? And they're about to introduce it? No objection in the society. Guyana is in a serious crisis, precipitated by racism and corruption. The PP government has refused to meet the collective leadership of the African Guyanese community, as I said, when it is required by the Constitution. What is the solution to that? Is that acceptable, that we just accept defeat and just act like defeatists and allow the government to breach the Constitution? And just cry out and say, well, what are we going to do with their power? It was obvious that the PP government is opposed to leveling the playing field in Guyana. We reject this kind of government. We reject it. They have rejected equality, equal justice, racial justice, equitable distribution of the resources, equitable distribution of the natural patrimony and management of it. All of their policies and practices establish that they're an apartheid government. I don't believe that we're emerging. I believe this is an apartheid government. And so I came to Atlanta to tell you guys that we are in a better position than the people home to create change home. Let me repeat that. We in the diaspora are in a better position to create change in Guyana because we live in a democracy. We have access to the powers that be in this country, every one of us in every state. And that's where the strategy lies. All of us have a responsibility now. They're going to shoot them down in Guyana. They're going to impose all sorts of execute all sorts of terrorism charges against them. People are scared. People are intimidated. Even though they're coming for us to in the diaspora, we must go for them back. You guys hear me? We must go for them back. So I want you guys in Atlanta to write your senators. We have two beautiful senators here in Georgia, Democratic senators that you guys elected. You have Nikisha Williams, you have Hank Johnson. Write to them. Let them know what is happening in Guyana. Let them know what is happening in Guyana. And to the people in Guyana, I see thousands of them watching. You have to also find a way to stand up for your right. Mr. Moderator, even journalists have to stand up for their right. For the African Guyanese population to thrive and be part of the society, there are some things that we need to see, and I'll outline them briefly. We need access to opportunity and investment and funding. That's the responsibility of a government to make sure that the playing field is level, so that everybody can have access to investment and business opportunities and funding from the banks. There needs to be a review of the banking system, the banking regulations, to make sure that it is fair, so that Black people can get loans to buy homes and buy cars and establish businesses. The government is busy talking about equity in the police force and the GDF. In the meantime, they have a 90% domination of the business sector. And they don't see the need for equity there. Because they don't want Black people to get rich. That could be challenged because that's an opinion, Mr. Moderator. But we have to level the playing field. A government minister told me just recently that it is not the government's responsibility to level the playing field. Government mustn't interfere with the market. All of the contracts for government, from the government, goes to East Indians. When Gail Teixeira said that everything we said at the meeting was lie, some members of the Congressional Black Caucus called us and said, okay, let's see the data. We want some empirical evidence. And we commissioned some people in Guyana, including a great economist, to do a study of the contracts the government has awarded through the tender board. And it was shocking. 82% of the contracts go to East Indians. Hundreds of billions of dollars. It's a transfer of the wealth of the country to East Indians. Unacceptable. And 10% go to foreigners, including in that 10%, 80% of that 10%, the foreigners, are East Indian contractors from Trinidad. We can't have a country with that. East Indians are about 39% of the population. But the entire capital budget of a government goes to that small percent of East Indians that support them. Not all East Indians that support them. That must change. The government must stop taking away the lands of black people. In fact, we must pass a law. The next government that goes into power, we know this one won't do it, pass a law to prevent people from taking away black ancestral lands, just like they protect Amerindian lands. We want to see that law. We want to see increased wages like the government promised for public servants who are black, including teachers. And we want justice for the Henry boys, and justice for criminal backers, and justice for all the black boys that were killed, and justice for the 1,400 black men that were killed, and black justice for Courtney Cumming. And let me talk about Courtney Cumming. The Attorney General has said I accused him. I didn't accuse Courtney Cumming. We at Seedgate wrote the former government and asked them for information about the murder of Courtney Cumming. And that's a disaster for the Granger administration. I'm not afraid to say it. That man died campaigning for them, and they did nothing to ensure he received justice. It is the most ungrateful political act I've ever seen. And the police supplied us with information that shows that he and Nanlal was investigated for that murder along with the security guard. So I don't know why he's coming after me. He should go after the people who said I saw, or the witnesses, or the police who investigated him.
Justice for what?
All of them. And also, we want to have oil blocks too. Black people must own oil blocks too. The government thinks that we don't know what's going on. We know they have sold oil blocks to some of their supporters already. We know that. And we want to see approval for black local content too. 90% of the approvals for local content in the oil and gas sector are East Indians. What happened to the Amerindians? What happened to black people? We don't have companies, we don't have businesses in Guyana. And then gold and diamond exports license, 98% East Indians. We have to correct that. So as I close, I want to say this. We can only achieve these things if we're united. We can only achieve these things and justice and racial justice and equality if we are united. And I've come by to you in Atlanta tonight to plead with you that all of us here in the diaspora in the United States, this is a moment we must put our differences aside and come together. Come together to fight the injustices in Guyana. And I want to say this on behalf of the supporters of the opposition. It is the infighting and the division that we are seeing in the PNC is unacceptable. It is destructive and counterproductive to the people who voted for them. It is time we see an end to fractionism in the opposition. So David Granger, Amna Ali, Joe Harmon, put your differences aside. Come and work with your party and the opposition in the interest of the people who voted for the party. The only way we will do this is if we have unity. And so now is the time for all of us to come together. All of us who do not support the PPP because of racism, because of injustice, because of the atrocities that we see, including murders of our people, we must come together. Let us recruit also a new cadre in Guyana of young people. Create a new cadre of leaders. When I was 16, I started to work for Faith Harding, was a Minister of Public Service. Enrico was right there. They helped to train me as a little boy. At 17, I was working as a special assistant to the President of Guyana. That's what we want to see now. The older folk, the more senior leaders must step aside. I ain't say step back, step aside and guide our young people into leadership so that we can have a new generation of leaders to pick up the mantle and take our country forward. Thank you.
All right. And that is Mr. Rickford Burke. And he has spoken. We have a mandate as a people. That is actually the first half of the fire brigade. What we would like to do, thank you so much, Mr. Rickford Burke. We appreciate your vigor and your fervent passion and the work that you have been doing via your organization to inspire and ignite us so that we can continue advocating for our folks back home in Guyana. Thank you so much, my brother. We would like to take an intermission. We would like to actually take 15 minutes, and I mean exactly 15 minutes. We have prepared some refreshments for a very nominal fee in support of our brand new organization. And so we would like for you to support us as we continue to grow this little organization and movement in terms of a way forward. So we will be right back. And for those folks that is actually in virtual land, please do not touch the dial. This is a bio break. We're coming back for the second half of the fire brigade. So thank you so much. See you in 15 minutes. Thank you.
Yeah. I have a ticket. So,
Yeah, I'm really thinking Tanika.
Tanika, go ahead, please. Whoever wants to talk to you. Yes, yes. Okay. Like everything else, and as the moderator said, we'd like you to support the bar so that we can have funds to do what we want to do. Everything that you see here today, including the renting of this all, everything that you see here today had to be paid for. And it came out to the pockets of the very people who were standing in front of you today. So to have the movement forward We need a little bit of something.
Okay, okay.
Just support us, please. You have your Guyanese dishes at the bar, and whether you're Guyanese or not, it's quite delicious. So please partake.
Dr. Hines. Hello, sir. You know what this is, sir? Mr. Martin. Nice to meet you. Good work, yeah. You know, what was it? You all come from there. But you want to pass it up? You want so it's a pleasure. Yes.
Hello there, how are you?
All ideas, memorial day. So just I need to Cabo. Well, you know Cabo. I saw you at one of the big bashes. All right, all right, all right. Yeah. Yes. Oh, good, good, good. Hi, brother. All right. Okay, what is this here? Good. Okay. Right. Oh, good, good, good. Good. Yes, and with their people, they pass them around. Yes, 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 yes. Yes. Right, 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 right. That's what, right, right, right. Uh-huh. Right, 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 right. Mhm. Right, 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 right. You don't want to. Right. Oh. Yes. Right, right. Yes. So, if you go to them and talk to them, they get you idea, they'll push you around. Um, but at the end of the day, they're the ones who, you know, you have to go to them. Yeah. Great. Yeah. Right.
Yes, 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 yes. Right, right. Show me. Hi, my brother. That's a husband.
Yes, that's a funeral duty. If you need to use the ladies, as soon as you go through the door, the back door, you make a right turn, it's straight in front of you. The just, if you go through here, if you make a left turn, it's going to be in front of you. Okay? Thank you very much. We're going to be, we're going to be starting back in the next 5 minutes. Okay? So have your snack. And enjoy. No one is on rice leave.
Let's go, let's go. Lovely dance, lovely dance. Lincoln, all right, all right. Okay, okay. All right, good, 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 good. All right, all right. Good, good, nice.
Yes.
Can I see Mr. Eric Smith? Mr. Eric Smith, please.
I was looking. All right, all right. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Right, thank you. Okay, all right.
Mr. Eric Smith,
Recognize. Pavel. Send the boys in, remember? Oh. Seis valor. Take another one. One, two, three.
Dalton?
Yeah.
Sultan.
Right back now, as soon as we start the match. I noticed you Third until we convene, if you don't mind, we're gonna ask you guys to take your seats. You can still continue managing, and we'll continue this after the program. Okay. So we will ask everybody that is in the center aisle to take a seat, please. And please bear with me, I'm a little bit under the weather. So that's why my voice is a bit husky. But we are glad for each and every one of you.
Thank you, guys. If I can get everyone's attention to the front, I would be very appreciative of that.
Give me a second.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. All right. So we actually have two baskets in the front. And certainly noticeably, we are in a church. What I would like to ask each of us, it is to plant a seed. I'm not going to call it a donation. I'm not going to call it, I would call it an investment. I would like to ask for each of our brothers and sisters here tonight to plant an investment, a seed into this movement. And so what we will be doing is we are going to be passing the baskets around. We will encourage you to be extremely generous. No amount is either too large or small. And if it's larger, we appreciate it even more. And so what we would like to do is to pass the baskets around, and we would like to ask you for an investment, a seed into this movement, because greater days are certainly ahead of us, and we want to make sure that we have the foundation so that we can continue the great work for our people back home in Guyana. Thank you so much. I appreciate your generosity. Thank you very kindly. So we do that for the next 2 to 3 minutes, and then we're going to jump right back into the program. We also would like to leave some time, the moderator, for Q&A and all of that good stuff. So we will do an introduction of Dr. Ines. We will certainly have his presentation. We also want to be very mindful of time. So the quicker we get the investment and the contribution and the seed planted, we will move forward with the remainder of the program. Thank you very kindly.
Thank you, Norbert. I think even my flag is frustrated with whatever is going on in Guyana. It's just for people all the time. But we got it up flying. As we rise up, so would our flag rise in the stand tall, the gold in our head, just like it did on the 1st of May, no, the 26th of May, 1966. All right? Only if immigrants had known that we would have been here like this, the lyrics of this song would have been slightly different. If you understand what I mean? It would be racing, mashing up Guyana. It used to be
I would like to ask Azel to stand by. Azel, you're being called to the front to stand by. Thank you.
Unfortunately, it's not only mashing up the world, it's mashing up Guyana. And that's why we're here, and that's why we must continue advocating for equality, for justice, for liberty and freedom of the country, the one that gave us birth, the one that molded you in your formative years. Each and every one of us here has to be ambassadors of our country. You know, why is this coming? Let me just say something. I often tell some of my friends that Guyanese people behave like what I call it is having a battered woman syndrome. Years ago, when you and I were kids, a boy or a man hit a woman, which he was supposed to do, but it used to happen. When a man hit his wife, she put on some rouge and go on the road. Guys, what happened to your face? Oh, the problem, but the baby scratched and so on. Right? We've been abused, and we don't tell anybody about it. We are being abused in Guyana, but we don't tell our Caribbean people what is happening in our country. We've been abused in Guyana. We don't tell even our American brothers and sisters or wherever in the world what is happening to us. We kind of sugarcoat it like everything goes on, everything is all right. We go to our churches, we go to profit and non-profit organizations that we're in, voluntary associations, and we sit up there like if nothing happens. We have to change that. We have to be the voice of the disenchanted back home. Each and every one of us. This is not about referring the Lord, or this fight, this struggle is not a Rick struggle. This fight, this struggle is not a David Hank struggle. This fight, this struggle is not for Novella Noble struggle. It's each and every one of us here struggle. Each and every one of us is Guyanese, or most of us, because we have some American friends in the crowd. We welcome you. We're glad that you participated with you. We're glad that you're here to see and to witness, and also to help to politicize the grievances that we go through. What is happening in Guyana, it's painful, it's hurtful. And when we come here today, it's not just for another source of gathering. It's the galvanizer movement. And so without further ado, I will pass you back on to the lady chairman. Thank you very much.
Okay. I hope you guys have noticed it. Part of our story, it is about the visual demonstration as well. We intentionally did a collage of some of the things that is happening so that it can certainly be in the very forefront of our minds with what is happening. So hopefully you guys have seen some of the photos as Rickford had been speaking about the challenges and the struggles in Guyana, and those individuals that have been arrested, and all of the things that's happening. And what a better way to tell a story that you can certainly depict it in pictures. And so it becomes real. Storytelling is critically important so that we really understand and we get the message of what is really transpiring in a beautiful country. So we will move right into the remainder of our program. And I would actually like to call Ms. Hazel Marshall for the introduction of Dr. David Hines. And as we wait for Hazel to come, there's a little poem, just an excerpt or a few excerpts from a poem called A Brave and Startling Truth by Maya Angelou. And in this poem, she says, "We, this people, on a small and lonely planet, traveling through casual space, past aloof stars, across the way of indifferent suns, to a destination where all science tells us it is possible and imperative that we learn a brave and startling truth. And when we come to it, to the day of peacemaking, when we realize our fingers from the fists of hostility and allow the pure air to cool our palms, when we come to it, when the curtain falls on the minstrel show of hate, and the faces suited with scorn and scrubbed clean, when the battlefields and Coliseum no longer rake our unique and particular sons and daughters, up with the bruised and bloody grass to lie in identical plots of foreign soil, when the rapturous storming of the churches, when the screaming racket in the temples have ceased, when the peanuts of waving gaily, when the banners of the world tremble, sweetly in good and clean breeze, when we come to it, when we let the rifles fall from our shoulders and children dress their dolls in flags of truce, when landmines of death have been removed, the age can walk in the evenings of peace. I'll stop there. Thank you.
Good evening again, everyone. This time, it's an honor for me to stand in front of you to introduce to you our second presenter, my bro, my compadre, my confidant, my very good friend, Dr. David Hines. I'm glad that they selected me to do this because in this room, I dare anybody to say they know David better than me. We met as little children. Well, he's a little boy to me. So you might want to figure my age, but David is at least 3 or 4 years younger than I. But he was a young upstart, so we were good friends. When my mother moved to Buxton, and we met at a quiet, little-known school that produced stalwarts called Buxton Government Secondary. We had a wonderful teenage experience. I think after our batch, the then government broke it down and moved the school to Bladen Hall. That's a conversation for another day, another night. But let me tell you about his credentials. David is a professor at the Arizona State University in African American Studies with concentration on the Caribbean and the African Diaspora Studies in the School of Social Transformation. His research interests includes governance and politics in the Caribbean, race, ethnicity, and politics in the African diaspora. African diasporan popular music, sports as political discourse, and Black political leadership. He holds a PhD in political science from Howard University, an MA in political science from Howard, and a BA from the University of the District of Columbia. Outside of that, David is a son of the Buxton soil, an indefatigable fighter for human rights, democracy, children's rights, women's rights. You're never going to hear him beating up a woman, kicking up a woman, cursing up a woman, beating up children, abusing elderly people. That's not my brother. And that's why he's here before you. He is not one for ostentatious things, as you can see. He comes dressed very humbly. He ain't gonna be living in no property in Prattville or any other ville. He ain't gonna be driving the biggest SUV in the city and the most expensive cars, because he's rooted and grounded in simplicity and humility. Don't underestimate humbleness with stupidity and fear. He is fearless, and he will take on the biggest behemoth. Why? Because he knows he's walking the right way. He is not going to see and shut up. A lot of people would say, you try them, you got no time with them. David will stop and make time, because you're supposed to do that. To each one, seek one and help one. I am not going to say anything else about David. He's going to tell you about himself. But it's going to be interesting. He is a friend and a brother that I respect. And the world respects him and looks up to him and listens to him. Thank you, David. The mic is over to you.
Thank you very much, Hazel. And I remember when Hazel and her family came to Buxton. What is most important, her mother was a nurse. And I have some marks all over my skin as a little boy and you're gone to nurse. And often we public people forget those people. We are standing here tonight as Dr. Hines, but it's the nurse who mended the broken bones and stitch and give you the tablets to drink. It's the lady that walk you across the street so that the cars won't knock you down. It's that lady who sold plantain chips in front of the school and could look at you and see that you left home and you didn't eat too much and would give you an extra few plantain chips for that cent or penny. The ordinary people who took care of us and made us who we are. I want to thank the organizers of this event. I want to thank Sister Hazel for calling me a few days ago and asking me if I would come. I just got back from Guyana. In fact, I was still in Guyana. And I said, yes, I'll be happy to be here. And as I look across this room tonight and I look at ordinary people, beautiful people, and I may say beautiful Black people, on a Saturday night when you could be doing anything, you come in the halls of the house of the Lord to stand and to sit in your own name. Many people think that you have to have great numbers in order to make a statement. But we're making a statement tonight that here we are thousands of miles away from our homeland. But our concern for the plight of our people compels us to come here tonight and to be witnesses. We are in the house of the Lord as we must, because of people who have been ravaged for 400 years. If they did not believe that there was a higher being, we would not be here today. We have to believe that there would be a day after slavery. We have to believe. And as believers, we know that the storm may be rough tonight. But just as there was a tomorrow after slavery, there will be joy in the morning for us. That I am confident of. I know our frustrations sometimes lead us to ask, what are Guyanese doing? And I can tell you as someone who goes to Guyana at every twist and turn, Guyanese are doing a lot. Guyanese are doing a lot. They are surviving. And we have to survive so that when that time comes for us to make that final step, body and soul would be together. We sit here tonight in a state that gave birth to the drum major, the believer in the beloved community, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And he once said to those who took his nonviolence for granted, he said, I shall not be a firefighter with a hose putting out your fires that you made. It's one of the toughest brother. We call him the prophet of nonviolence. But to have the courage to fight nonviolently demanded strength of character and spirit. And we Guyanese have to be cognizant of the fact that within us, within our consciousness, lies a tenacity that is just there to be unlocked. Today, I had the privilege to go spend 4 to 5 hours with someone who inspired me from the time I was a child. They called him the Gandhi of Guyana. Some call him the Sage of Buxton. He's going to be 98 years in a couple of days. And I went today to say thanks to him one more time, because I've always said thanks to him. And my thanks to him was not to say thank you, but to sit with him and talk with him. And I could feel it in my bones that he's satisfied, that all his years of sacrifice for our Guyana is not wasted. I'm talking about Brother A.U.C. Guyana. Please give it to him. Yes, the talks about my humility. And that humility comes from sitting at the feet of that indomitable spirit. And so I come to you tonight for us to talk about seriousness. I went to Guyana for a week and a half, and the party that I belong to, the Working People's Alliance, we took a conscious decision to go onto the streets of Guyana and to make an intentional intervention. We had watched as bulldozers bulldoze the homes of ordinary people at Boko, Arcadia. We watched the atrocities. We watched the policeman kneeling on the back of a young black woman. We watched them bury animals. We watched them take away the dreams of families. And I can tell you as an academic, someone who studies social and political phenomena, that of all the governments in post-colonial Caribbean, not Guyana, of all the governments in post-colonial Caribbean, this government that we have in Guyana is the most cruel government. There's nothing I've seen in politics more cruel than these people that are at the helm of our government. Any government that will bulldoze the homes of people, and then the leader faces the nation and said, I did it because I don't want to look weak. I have never heard that from any government, any leader in the history of the Caribbean. I say that to say that we're in the presence of something new. And I'm talking to you as one who, when as a 50-year-old, joined the struggle against a government at that time that we thought was wicked. As the young people say, you didn't see wickedness yet. It is not about attacking your political opponents. That's politics. It is not about trying to shut up your political opponents. That's politics. But when you go to poor people's homes and you bulldoze it because you could, that's not politics. When you watch young women decided that they are not going to sell their bodies, but they are going to sell products. They are going to sell sweet drink. They are going to sell food. And you watch them in front of the hospital and you lit down their stalls. That's not just politics. When you watch a young woman guarding your house at night while you sleep, and you spit in her face, when she did not spit in your face, that's not just politics. Sisters and brothers, I want to draw to you here tonight that this is a question of humanity. What it is to be human in life.